Hi, I'm Charlene Jorgensen, and welcome again to Quilting from the Heartland. Today I'm happy to have my granddaughter Brittany with us. Welcome, Brittany.
Thanks, Grandma. It's great to be back again.
Brittany's actually been with us since she's 10 years old, and today she's going to show us how to make a bear paw, which we have named Bear Patch just because of the fabrics that we've used in it. And I want Brittany to tell you about the quilt itself.
Well, first we picked out the border piece, which has bears in it, and it's got the little flowers, and then it's also got the purple that we used in the quilt. So it was a really good piece for that. And then once we got the border, we picked out the daisy flowered print that we used for the large squares. After that, we went to the plaids, which kind of pulled the brown from the bears in, and it worked out really good for the sashing. So then we decided to get the claws, and we went with the purple that we got from the border again. And the bugs in the background worked out nicely because they're just a real neutral color, and they've got the little bugs going on. So
it's a real nice contrast, Brittany, to the bear paws themselves. And the finishing touches that were done on this quilt were done on the long arm quilting machine. And there's like a continuous line loop that was done on the sashing, which is a very nice way to finish off sashing. And the intersections just have a cross through them. And there's basically just a whole lot of meandering throughout the whole quilt, over the bear paws themselves as well as on the outside border. The binding was a plain purple, which was, again, just like as if it were another border around the outside edge of the quilt. And next, if you take a closer look to just a single block up on the flannel board, you can get a closer look at the fabrics that were used, and I'll let Brittany talk a little bit more about that.
okay, the large square, we used the floral, and then with the rectangles, we used the neutral bug fabric, and we had little squares made out of that too. And then for the center, we used the square, and then we used that on the other side of the rectangle to put the claws together.
And these are all, again, from the Quilter starter kit, aren't they?
Yep. And then we used the triangle, the small triangle, for the claws.
And show them how the seam allowance is included in the template. When you hold it up there, you can see how the template actually has the extra seam allowance in it. And that's what makes it so easy for us to cut them out and to sew them together. And then down in front of us, again, take a closer look at the fabric so you can see how it all fits together in the quilt. Like she said earlier, the bear fabric was the first one that she chose, and then the purples and pink for the claws, and the floral pattern for the pads, and then of course the lighter background and the plaid, which was really a fun group of fabric to work with. And now Brittany is going to show us how to cut the pieces for the bear patch.
Okay, what we did beforehand to save time is we took and we laid the triangle on here, matched up the edges, measured how long it was to here, and then we lined the fabric up the long way and just cut our strip. So now that we've got that done, we'll go on to the next step, which is cutting out the triangles. So first of all, we're going to lay it on here and cut off our selvage. We've got the little fabric grippies on here so it stays. We're going to take the safety lock off because it won't cut before we take the safety lock off, so we'll just click that down and then we can grab it, stick our finger up there.
Now she's bifolded the fabric up on top of the board so it's easy to turn the board as she's cutting. You want to leave the fabric up on top of the board and not disturb it.
I'm just going to flip that around the other way to save fabric. And you just continue turning it like that.
Cut one more so that they understand that you actually have no waste of the fabric when you're cutting it this way. And as you get more experienced, you can do as many as 6 layers of fabric at one time. And you end up with accurate pieces.
And then when you're done, you're going to make sure to put the safety back on.
Yep, that way if it should fall on the floor, it won't hurt anybody.
Yep.
And I think now, Brittany, we're ready to start putting the block together.
Okay. The first thing we did is we got a scrap to sew onto, an anchor cloth. So should we start with the half squares?
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to do a few half squares and sew some chain sewing.
And those are really easy to sew together, aren't they?
Yep, you just put the right sides together. And before we started sewing, I set my machine on a scant 1/4 inch.
You want to use the stiletto, so there's...
Just make sure and take it slow because it'll save time in the end so you don't have to rib.
Now, Brittany doesn't like to use the open toe foot like I do. She'd rather have the area closed, so...
After that, we're just going to go right on to the next one. Make sure they're matched up pretty good. And then when we're done with this, we'll do the sewing test to make sure we have perfect squares.
You want to use the stiletto at the very end, honey.
I'll just cut my thread. Cut these apart. We'll do a quick
finger press.
Just kind of scratch your finger down on there.
It takes a little extra time, doesn't it, to do that? But you know what?
Yeah, but then you don't get them flipped the wrong way, and then it takes longer to get it fixed. Like that.
Sometimes I use the stiletto instead of my fingers. That way I won't burn myself.
I think that's... There we go. Then you can just take your square, set it down on there, and it's a square. So then you would just do the same for this one. Do that quick so we can sew these together. Finger press it
While
open.
you're pressing that one, Brittany, I'm going to trim off the edges of this one so it's ready to go. And I like to work with the seam facing towards the template. So I'm going to trim off the ears, and notice how I'm turning the board and not the actual fabric.
Here's the other one.
I find that to be a much easier way to do it. Again, place your template down on top of the patchwork and line up the corner of the template with the seam, and then just trim off the extra fabric.
When we're done with this, we'll lay it up there and make sure our claws are pointed in the right direction. Let's see. That one there. This one there. So then we'll just sew it together like that. Match it up. Cut the thread.
See, if you sew onto your anchor cloth, you don't have to cut the thread all the time. It's whatever you like to do, and I know you like to cut your thread every time, and so that's...
And we'll just finger press this guy open.
We all do it a little bit different.
Iron it.
Looks good, Brittany.
And then we can stick it back up there. I think next we'll show them how these go together. So this will go on this side like that, and just fold it together. I like to sew with my seams on top, so I make sure I don't squish them. Oh, it's telling me my thread broke, so I'll go and make sure. Oh, it looks like it just came unthreaded, so I can fix that really simple, because this one's got an automatic threader on it. Just bring it through.
You get kind of spoiled with that, don't you, Brittany?
I suppose. So then we'll just try this again. You know what? I should be sewing on my anchor cloth. That's probably what I did wrong.
Here, take this one. Oh, that's right.
So we'll just go right onto this. After that, we'll sew these two. Is it this way or this way?
I don't know. Lay it back up on the flannel board and make sure you got it the right way.
I'll iron this out first. So finger press that open. Press it. Lay these back up there. Okay.
The confusing part of this block is you got to make sure that you've got the claws facing in the right direction.
Okay, so then we'll just sew this together like that, and then we can sew it onto there. I'll leave that up there and make sure we get it right. Okay, sew back onto my anchor cloth. Ahead of time, I set the speed. Did I get that turned now? I'm gonna just double check. Okay, there, I did have it wrong. Okay.
You slowed down the machine, did you?
Yep, before we started, I slowed the machine's speed down.
Brittany's really taking advantage of the flannel board too to help her keep from getting, going in the wrong direction with the piecing. It's really frustrating after you've sewn a whole lot of things together to have to back sew. And Brittany doesn't like to rip very much, do you, Britt?
Actually, I think that's usually your job when we're sewing, isn't it?
Well, it kind of is.
Okay, so after we're done with that, we'll go back up to the flannel board, make sure we've got it right, and we do. So then we'll just fold those two together, come back over here and do this last seam.
You like to use that thread cutter, don't you?
It's fun. Okay, so this last time, finger press this open. It's not wanting to cooperate.
Sometimes if you sneak the stiletto between there too, it'll help you find the center. But this is working.
Yep, okay, there we go. So we'll just take our iron, run it. Like that, and then that piece will just go right there. Are we going to do this seam next?
Yep.
Okay.
When you bring it down here, Brittany, lay it down in front here, and I want to remind them about something that you probably forgot to tell them, was that, see these intersections right here? They're now 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and so when this seam is sewn, you'll end up with the perfect point here. And I know you're used to that happening, but I think we need to remind them that they need to watch for that.
Yep, I think I'm just going to give this a quick press because I don't think I got it good enough the first time. Here we go.
There, that looks
now we're
much
ready
better.
to pin this. And when we pin it, we're going to do right sides to...
Okay, let's take a look again. There you go. Right sides together. And there's really just 2 seam lines that you have to match up. You don't have to match anything in the center.
We're going to want to go about 1/4 of an inch down.
Right on the intersection, actually.
Yeah, make sure and hit the point on that so it goes right through. And then you can just turn the pin in like that.
Oh, that's how you're going to do it this time. Okay.
And do the same thing on the next
Your
one.
mom does it different than I do, and we all do it a little
You
different.
can kind of tell where the 1/4 of an inch down on that one is because you got the little point of the triangle on there.
Okay.
There we go. Turn it in. Now we can go do the sewing.
Remember your anchor cloth. You keep forgetting that, don't you?
Yeah. Start at the top of this.
What's your favorite part about making a quilt, Brittany?
I like picking out the fabric, but sewing's fun too. Oops.
And then, of course, when you actually get to put it on your bed, that's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's pretty fun too. I had a little corner that was going to get caught in there, so I just brought my foot up and straightened it out.
Also notice that Brittany hasn't done any back stitching at all. And now this time go on to an anchor cloth.
Okay.
That way you don't have to cut your thread.
Yeah, that way you remember a little bit better when you start. It's just there. I'm gonna clip that off there. Take the pins out.
Also, I find it easier, Brittany, if I finger press on a hard surface rather than the ironing board. I noticed you were finger pressing over here. If you go over to the sewing machine, oh, those are beautiful points.
Looks like it came out pretty well, so.
Pretty good. I think that's a perfect intersection. Way to go.
So now we'll just finger press this open, and you got to make sure and get the intersections real well.
Well,
So
while I press that open, Brittany, why don't you work on the center connecting row, and I'll get this ready so that we can actually show them how to connect the center row to the top bear paws, okay?
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to sew these two together to form a little bit longer piece. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to do the same on the other side. I really like this bug fabric. It's so cute with the little butterflies with the checkered wings.
I know it. It goes perfect with the border, doesn't it?
Okay, and I'm going to sew back onto my anchor cloth.
Now, if you give me a couple of those pieces to press, I can press, and you can just keep sewing.
Actually, I'll help you do this because I'm going to need these before I go any farther. There we go. There you go. Then what we're going to do is take the purple block up here and just fold it over on that side. And I already have my anchor cloth on there. So I'm just going to cut that off there. And once I get done pressing this, then we'll just sew it onto the other strip.
What she's doing now is making that long connecting row that goes between the top and bottom section of the block.
So we'll do right sides together again. Sew into my anchor cloth. Oops. Sew onto my anchor cloth again. And I can just cut this off right here.
And I'll bring down the other, or the top half of the block. That kind of gets it ready for you.
Okay, so this is just going to go on right here. And we'll do some pinning and...
Really, the only intersections you have to pin, Brittany, are here,
Yep.
here, here, and here. And just like you did before, and you pin a little differently than I do. You go, you don't use the standing pin, do you?
Actually, I just kind of use the standing pin as the pin. I just turn it in. So we're going to go 1/4 of an inch down, and like I said, when you do triangles, it's really easy to tell because the 1/4 inch just falls right there. So do...
It has its own little triangle right there.
Yep. There. And we'll turn it up like that.
We don't use pins for a lot of the quilting process, but when it comes to connecting rows together, it's really impossible to get by without using them.
It helps you make sure and get the intersections right on. I think I'm just going to quit with this one, and then you would just...
Okay.
It's not wanting to cooperate.
After that row is sewn, Brittany, then we just continue on and finish the bottom half
Yep.
of the block.
You would sew the cornerstones onto the sashing here, and then do the same on the other side, and then you'd sew the bottom onto the bottom part of the block and the top onto the top part of the block, and sew the sashing all together so it just kind of fits together, kind of like a puzzle.
Just like the block we showed them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
Yep.
Brittany, for being with us today. It's been so much fun working with you again.
Well, it was fun to be
don't-
back.
Well, good. I'm glad you think so.